You can post about the convention, about using our hashtag at FICCI-AGM. You can also tag us at FICCI_India. May I request President Mr. Sandeep Somani to begin the session by presenting a pledge certificate to Shri Piyush Goyal, Honorable Minister. This actually, Mr. Minister, has arisen out of your tweet post the Exim Bank. We pledged to give a midday meal to 5 young kids for the whole year. May I invite President Mr. Sandeep Somani to give his welcome remarks.
Honorable Commerce, Industry and Railways Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, FICCI Senior Vice President Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, Vice President Mr. Uday Shankar, Secretary General Mr. Dilip Chenoy, past presidents of FICCI, friends from the industry, ladies and gentlemen. At the 73rd annual session of FICCI in the year 2000, late Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari ji Vajpayee ji had laid special emphasis on the need to strengthen the partnership between government and industry. He said, and I quote, "It is the most important precondition to accelerate our growth rate to meet the 9% yearly target that has been set. Only this will allow India to double its per capita income in 10 years and make India a global economic power." Unquote. India has witnessed good economic growth since then, and especially in the last few years, it has been the fastest growing economy in the world. We, however, are facing a challenge in terms of growth now, with the first and second quarter of 2019-20 registering a poor 5 and 4.5% growth respectively. This reminded me of what Vajpayee ji had said so well in 2000, and also the call of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji at the FICCI AGM in 2017, and I quote, "Political parties and chambers of industry should keep in mind the country's requirements and the feelings of the people and work accordingly." Unquote. Again, it is only the venerable partnership between the industry and government that can bring the growth back to 7-8% and even higher in the coming quarters and years to achieve the target set by the Prime Minister of making India a 5 trillion economy soon. I would be failing in my duty if I don't tell you what our guest of honor, Piyush Goyal ji, said while unveiling the India Pavilion design of Expo 2020 in Dubai recently. He said, and I quote, "Prime Minister Narendra Modi's goal of making India a 5 trillion economy is completely doable if all the stakeholders come and work together." Unquote. There is a complete unanimity across the board that the center and the states, along with the industry and the public on the whole, have to work together to get to this goal. This is why we decided to dwell at length during this year's annual session on the agenda India Roadmap to a 5 trillion economy. Becoming a 5 trillion economy is a given. The question is only how soon. The government led by PM Modi has already turned the downturn in the economy into an opportunity to deepen the reforms by getting into the critical areas like labor laws, besides the added focus on fiscal and monetary policy measures. If IBC, GST and RERA are the reforms implemented by the government in its first term that have laid a solid roadmap for the improving the business environment in the country, the reduction in corporate tax rate from 30% to 22% in its current term is a move that makes India competitive now in terms of tax incidence with regard to its competitive countries. It is a time to look at the positives. The GDP growth appears to have bottomed out. IBC, followed by banking sector consolidation, is expected to improve the health and confidence in the banking system. Sustained reform mode is set to support the upward move, and the government and industry work together in capitalizing on this. There is no reason why we can't return to the higher growth trajectory quickly. The government on its part has been extremely responsive in dealing with the industry issues. I have personally seen how the Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji has taken industry suggestions to their logical conclusions in an expeditious manner. My experience gathered with the help of interactions with the ministers and officials across the board suggests that there is no area where the government is not working to bring in the necessary changes. In the upcoming budget on February 1-2, it is certain that a clear roadmap will be announced to reach the 5 trillion. The gloomy growth situation which was appearing, the global growth situation which was appearing quite gloomy till a few months back, thanks to the rise in protectionism and escalating US-China trade tensions, is witnessing a better outlook with the two countries inclined to settle their disputes now. On the domestic front, reforms have started showing their impact on the ground. India has moved up 79 places in the ease of doing business rankings from 142nd in 2014 to 63rd in 2019 and is well poised to break into the top 25 in the next few years. I commend Piyush ji for India opting out of the RCEP negotiations. It has sent a strong signal that we are not going to budge and ensure the country's interests are protected in any bilateral or multilateral trade pacts. Piyush ji's relentless efforts and strong resolve in guiding our efforts in this area, and it would be great to hear from him about the government's plans to expand our export basket, both in terms of products and countries, so that it contributes 1 trillion to the economy, which is so critical to meeting the target of 5 trillion. Though monetary policy in the RBI domain and the guiding force here is in inflation management, it is extremely encouraging to note that the central bank has also outlined supporting growth as its focus area. Here I would like to share that the industry expects the repo rate cuts to continue and a further reduction of 75 to 100 basis points in the existing rate cuts of in the existing rate of 5.15 with a better transmission of earlier rate cuts. This is also crucial for the growth to go beyond 7% in a speedy manner. I would like to list some of the specific areas for the consideration of the government. 1. Sir, for a typical manufacturing company, the number of compliances can be anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000. I have shared with you a very detailed report that FICCI has made in this matter. This 2,000 to 3,000 is including the rules and laws of the central and state. Further, if we include the rules, the total number of compliance can go up to 6,000 for a pharmaceutical company. For a small or medium-sized company, such compliances take up a lot of management time. Instead of focusing on business, entrepreneurs have to focus on compliances. Government must review these requirements and limit the same to ones that are absolutely essential. 2. There is also need to have an independent system of regulatory impact analysis for reviewing the existing and new regulatory requirements related to the manufacturing sector, even for services, sir. 3. Maintaining the sanctity of contracts is a critical issue, and problems on this account are largely faced by companies at the state level. We have seen that a change in the government can cause disruption for the existing contracts, wherein the incoming governments revisit the contract and introduces new norms for an existing legally binding agreement. At times, the contracts are even discarded, leading to private players who have already invested in the project incurring delays and huge losses and ultimately turning NPAs. This creates uncertainty and negative business sentiments. FICCI would like to suggest that the agreement once signed legally between a government agency and a private sector should be honored in totality, irrespective of the government in place, until and unless there is a proven case of corruption or malafide intentions during the course of the earlier execution of the contract. 4. While appointment of judges and filling up the vacancies in the judiciary is of utmost importance, there are several other areas where we need to see an improvement in the country's judicial system. Government is the biggest litigant in the country. Decreasing the amount of protracted government litigation in the courts would make a significant impact in the pendency of cases before the Indian courts. And 5, as you have shown, sir, India should only sign FTAs where we get greater access to to foreign markets, particularly for our service sector companies, since India is 60% of GDP comes from services. I think here Indian industry has less concerns with you at the helm. As my tenure as FICCI president ends with the closure of this annual session tomorrow evening, I assure all of you that I will keep contributing for new and better India in my own small, humble way. Let us all join in creating a new India. I would now like to play this very popular song of the 1957 movie, Naya Daur.
साथी हाथ बढ़ाना, साथी हाथ बढ़ाना, एक अकेला थक जाएगा, मिलकर बोझ उठाना, साथी हाथ बढ़ाना। हम मेहनत वालों ने जब भी मिलकर कदम बढ़ाया, सागर ने रास्ता छोड़ा, पर्वत ने शीश झुकाया, साथी हाथ बढ़ाना, साथी हाथ बढ़ाना।
May I now invite the Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji to deliver the inaugural address on this FICCI event.
Thank you very much, Sandeep, and heartiest congratulations on a year well done, very well utilized, and truly held the flag of FICCI and the country high. Compliments to you from all of us in this room. I would think this would call for a standing ovation for Sandeep, wouldn't it? My dear friends on the dais, Sandeep, Sangeeta ji, Uday, Dilip, Excellencies who have come in here today, this morning. So many friends that I see across the room that if I were to start acknowledging the presence of each one of the captains of Indian industry, I think my time would be out. But really great to see FICCI in full strength today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, we've seen a year full of uncertainties, full of concerns across the world. Challenges have engulfed businesses. In the globalized world, India cannot remain completely aloof. But despite that, I really feel enthused by the confidence that I see in industry, that I experience whenever I'm engaging with any of you. Despite all the issues that Sandeep just mentioned to me and to all of us, when I see the confidence of Indian industry again and again to bounce back, to come back into the growth trajectory, I at least feel reassured that when we are meeting on 20th of December, I don't know how many of you remember the United Nations has called this the Human Solidarity Day. And then when you hear him end his very good remarks with Saathi Haat Badhana, I think that's a great way to celebrate the Human Solidarity Day. Unless we all collaborate, unless we all work together, unless we all cooperate within the realms of competition, within the realms of our internal industry issues, I think the fact that Indian industry is willing to stand together, willing to work together, willing to be engaged with government is a great message for the entire country, entire world. And I compliment FICCI for having served India and Indian industry for over 90 years now. My best wishes to Sangeeta when she takes over in the coming year. And I'm very confident FICCI will continue its efforts to act as a bridge between government and industry, to continue to serve different segments of industry, yet also remain focused on what we would like to say, India first. Thank you very much for all the good work that has happened in terms of highlighting concerns of industries, in terms of helping us navigate the growth story, and of course, raising issues from time to time which truly matter for India and Indian industry. Thank you. There's one old saying, one good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. And in some sense, this was said by Linda Lambert, professor. And I think it's very important that this dialogue between government and industry continues relentlessly. And obviously, we may not find 100% outcomes out of every conversation. But I do think that as much as we engage with each other, we'll be able to come to solutions, we'll be able to devise innovative solutions. And I've made a humble beginning in the last few weeks when I met with all the industries as groups of, or different sectoral groups, though I did realize that in that there was a lot of hesitation to talk about issues that concern individual companies or groups. And then I moved into talking to individual groups to talk about their entire business profile, their investment plans going forward, where the roadblocks are, where the concerns are. And I must say, all the interactions that I've had so far have thrown up some very, very interesting issues that concern industry. Despite my own engagement for over 30 years, sitting on that side of the table, there were many issues that one didn't realize can cause concern, can be a matter of trepidation or problem in actual practice. And I must thank all those who have engaged with me so far for the very deep preparation that goes into each meeting. We also try on our end, if we get the concerns and issues in advance, to have all the different ministries in the room so that we can look at some faster outcomes. And I believe that that will be the way forward for us to address issues which ultimately don't concern one group or company, but I'm sure will concern all of you in this room. Because as you're aware, and as I've repeatedly said on many interactions at FICCI, this government does not believe in solving issues individually for a company. It believes in doing a root cause analysis, it believes in understanding where the problems are, and it believes in finding a sustainable solution that can outlive the individual's problem, but actually encompass a relief or a change or a better business environment for all of industry. And I personally believe, and I would really like to draw upon my own experience yesterday, when I had a very, very long interaction with all the export promotion councils across the country. So there were over 37 export promotion councils. I'm of course doing a review now to see whether we need 37 in the first place. But 37 export promotion councils and about 5 or 6 boards, every one of them presented their concerns yesterday. And while it did bugger up my calendar, but those of you who met me often know that that's going to be a part of any meeting with me. But it was very, very educative. I lost my voice over there. Abhi haldi aur shahad kha ke aa raha hu. It truly was an engaging session where so many issues came up, which probably sitting in government or for many of you sitting at very high levels, you would not even realize that your people down below are facing those problems. Whether it's a simple thing like an extension of an advance authorization license, or even probably deeper malaise about export financing concerns where we've seen a dip in available resources with the exporters. Simple things like the bank's charges on shipping bills. or even more complicated issues like what next post MEIS. So these concerns, when they all come to the table, and then later in the evening, you meet a group of traders and small businesses from Chandni Chowk. And I had a very good interaction with them late evening yesterday, where these very, very small businesses, retailers, people who are having a small turnover, engaging just a few people, maybe just storage godowns, when they tell you about the real problems on the ground, it could be an issue as simple as I have a godown where I store my material, but my clients want material to be packed in different quantities, so I have a small packaging machine. But then the officials come and say the godown cannot have a machine, so we'll seal the godown. Small issue, may not ever come be flagged off at your level, but at the operating level, imagine a small trader facing this issue, concerned, worried. Probably there could be some rent seeking also. That's where I think a responsible government, a listening government, can impact businesses, can make a change. And I would like to assure each and every one of you that as the Minister for Commerce and Industrial Promotion, Internal Trade, it's my responsibility to make sure that none of you face these kind of problems. And my office and I are available 24/7 to all of you for your concerns or your industry concerns. And a very interesting anecdote. I was asking for some feedback in writing about old issues. You mentioned about old issues which need to be probably ring-fenced. Harassment should not be there unless there's a mala fide. I asked the exporters to give me a feedback on what are those old issues with details. So let's say how many EPCG licenses have not been fulfilled for a variety of reasons and would like to close that by paying the relevant custom duty but doesn't want the harassment or the interest and penalty to pile up, like some people are under severe stress after a recent Supreme Court decision. I see the smile, but keep that smile. I'm sure there's a better tomorrow in store. No, I mean, now don't get down to if tomorrow comes and all of those philosophical things. But when I was asking them to share the information with my officer, I told my officer, give your mobile number. If anybody has a problem, they should contact you. And it was a room full of all of these export promotion councils. And I saw him hesitating and he said, I'll give my email ID. If anybody has a problem, they can contact me. I said, don't worry, I'll give you my mobile number. If anybody has a problem, you contact me. And I shared my mobile number with all the export promotion councils, so that if they have a problem, they don't even have to go to an officer, can call me up directly. And I think that's the way to go. We'll all have to start, and then you can imagine the impact on the officers. My own sense is, if we in industry also, first of all, start deciding or committing ourselves to this $5 trillion economy, a $5 trillion future for India, the path will get paved, will get much smoother. A lot of the problem today is in the mind, is in our own self-confidence. And there, I believe, industry and government needs to work together. We need to rejuvenate that entrepreneurial spirit, and we need to find solutions to certain problems which are real. They are there, but we need to sort them out. Some may happen immediately, some may take longer to sort out, and some will have innovative solutions where we can find a way out. Of course, I've just finalized the Nirvik scheme, about which Honorable Finance Minister had made an announcement a couple of months ago. And then we went through all the formalities of getting the approval of the Finance Expenditure Department and all of that, the procedures in government. I'm hoping we'll be able to close that and operationalize the Nirvik scheme I don't know if all of you are aware, but the NIRVIC scheme is designed in such a way that every exporter will get dollar financing or foreign exchange financing if he so desires at a LIBOR plus 150 basis points or thereabouts. And every exporter who wishes to take money in rupee terms will positively get rupee financing at about, I would say, the bank's repo rate, which is now 5.15%, plus a maximum of 200 or 250 basis points. Now at about 7.5%, if we can get rupee financing into the system for our exporters, who can take a forward cover and bring that cost down to about 3.5%, 4%. My own sense is one big concern of the exporting community will get out. We won't be dependent on government giving us an interest subsidy and interest subvention day to day. And whatever subvention we have to give, we've decided to give it to the ECGC, the Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is going to give a 90% cover to the banks for all the export credit that they give out to industry, a 90% cover. Now with that 90% cover, what happens? And by the way, the policy that ECGC has now brought out in NIRVIC scheme has been finalized or designed by the bankers themselves. I don't know how many of you have engaged with ECGC or bankers for export finance. I have. And when I was a young child, maybe 30 years ago, I still consider myself young though. But 30 years ago, when I started my exports and had the unfortunate experience of a bad debt in exports, I went to the ECGC office maybe 15, 20 times till I gave up that I'll ever get my claim. But that experience helped me today. We talked to the bankers, they said the policy is so convoluted, we never get our claims. So we said, okay, here is the paper. On a track change mode, you make a new policy, whatever you require. And we adopted that lock, stock and barrel as the bankers designed it. With that, the bankers have committed to me. And what happens is with a 90% backstop, they've got a AA rating automatically for everybody. They may not need your personal guarantees or huge amount of collaterals to be able to lend, particularly for the small exporters. They will not need too much of capital being blocked. With 90% backstop, the capital requirement falls drastically, and that gives them the ability to lend to our exporters cheap or at affordable costs. Now, this is the kind of solutions, to my mind, that all of you in industry will have to start designing and helping us operationalize or execute. Unless we all work together, we'll not be able to find solutions at the root of the problem. Really, India needs to get more competitive. Gone are the days that we can survive with government SOPs or government continuously looking at protecting one industry today and another tomorrow. You protect one industry here, the other gets impacted. You try to help the other industry, either the first complains or there's a third in line. And this cycle can only be stopped when we look at the entire value chain and address the problems of the entire value chain, be it inverted duties, be it dumping, be it unfair subsidies that are given out of the country, be it the FTAs that you eloquently talked about. Now, all of these issues will also need a lot of collaboration amongst all the industry participants. Unless we as industry are willing also to engage with each other, unless we are willing to understand each other's problems. A case in point, in a value chain in the textile sector, if there are three elements, and if each one were to think only about himself, it's never going to be able to sort out the problem of the chain. We'll never be able to bump up our textile exports beyond the $30-odd billion that we are doing now and have stagnated at for a long time. And we'll keep trimming. But if all the people in the value chain, from the raw material up to the finished garment, were to sit on a table and find a solution That's a win-win for all. Wonders can be achieved. I had that experience with the steel industry, where we had the exporters and the steel industry sit in the same room. Exporters, small exporters that is, require only 1 million tons of steel in a whole year. 1 million tons. I said, just give it to all these small exporters at an international price. It's not going to hurt the steel industry at all. We are making over 100 million tons of steel in India. But if we were to give 1 million tons at an international price, one big sector which opposes any support to the steel industry gets sorted out. It's another matter, and which is why I'm sharing so openly with all of you. There may be some steel players in FICCI also. It's another matter that for the last 2 months, they've kept talking but did not operationalize it. I came to know yesterday in my interaction, I blew my top. And any of you who has experienced that may also know how bad that can be. Ajit, I've not blown my top at you. Why are you so? But yesterday, from the meeting, I called up the major steel players. I said, this is just not acceptable. And they promised me that in a week it will get operationalized. Now, small things like this can help us find solutions. Now, I can help the steel industry without a problem because all the exporters have got sorted out. They've also committed that they'll ensure that Indian prices for the rest of the consumers for domestic industry will not rise inordinately. And their only concern is how to address the issue of unnecessary imports being dumped into the country and causing concerns or loss to India as a country. If we, all of us, the tire industry met me. The tire industry met me with the natural rubber producers right up to the tire, the entire value chain. We were able to come to terms of what the problem is, the inverted duty problem, what needs to be done to support the quality of the natural rubber producers, and whether industry can support the actual producers, who are small farmers, largely in South India and Northeast India. But if industry handholds them, it can just completely change the quality of rubber we make in India. It can help us protect the tire industry from unnecessary dumping, and the whole value chain can get sorted. I'm sharing these examples because I believe this is eminently doable, but it will need industry to support the government's efforts, but it will also need industry to collaborate with each other. And you can see a living example of that in Japan. Japan steel consumers have that nationalist spirit that they just don't allow 1 kilo of steel to go from India to Japan. There are 5 or 6 main importers. They just don't allow 1 kilo of steel to go from India. They've created almost, and when you talk to them, they'll say, but we don't stop anything. Anybody can export to Japan. It's subject to quality and price. Well, Suzuki and Toyota can use that same steel in India, but they can't use it in Japan. And when we say we are willing to guarantee that it will be lower price than what you're buying, then of course they start diverting from the subject and start talking about RCEP. And to my mind, this is where the solidarity of industry will be reflected if we can, as a group, work together for a better future for all of us. The domestic growth coming down a little bit. Of course, in another interaction in Board of Trade, I had a slip of tongue where I was trying to actually inspire the audience to think beyond the mathematics of 4.5% and 8%. But that slip of tongue has cost me so much that ever since then till today, every time they have to attack me in my opposition, they have nothing else except to give me the scientific terminology on which I had goofed up. But the fact is, it's all of us who have to decide whether we are willing to look at a 10% growth rate, a 9% or an 8% growth rate, or we are going to keep cribbing. I remember I had an engagement at Ashoka Hotel with all the industry associations, where the only subject I discussed with a presentation was about trade remedies. I have been pleading I've been pleading, and I say that word with full responsibility and a little bit of sadness. I've been pleading with all of industry. Please tell me which country is using any trade remedial measure or a non-tariff barrier which impacts your exports to that country, like the steel industry told me. Please tell me what is the cause of concern for you when you want to export to any country. The government is willing to stand by you. The government is willing to look at retaliatory action. The government is willing to impose similar TRQs or trade remedial measures. We will learn from the NTPs that others are setting up against your exports. And we may learn a few things what India needs to do. Because after all, in this free world, so-called rules-based free trading environment, we are finding that our exports are not growing, but others are dumping a lot of goods into India. But we are not working unitedly to sort that out. Industry will have to support each other a little bit. I may have 100 crore turnover. I may be using a raw material which will barely be 10, 20, 50 lakh rupees. I may land up paying 4 or 5 lakh rupees extra on that raw material. But that may save a large industry in India from dumping if I don't import it, but use a domestic product. Somewhere, all of us will also have to invigorate that nationalist spirit, that we care for India, we care for the future of all the industry in India. And I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, the day we decide that we are not going to get deterred by small issues. Sandeep ji mentioned about 3 or 4 issues. Very truly, I agree with you about the compliances. Frankly, having run a small-scale industry also, I know how detrimental that can be for day-to-day working. In our own small way, in the last 5 years, we've been doing significant changes on various issues. I remember yesterday I did a review also of the boiler, IBR, Indian Boiler Regulation Organization. Now it's a totally state-driven organization. Center only sets the policy framework. And I remember my own experiences. I don't know whether public platform I can say it, but all of you understand what I'm alluding to. How I would manage to get a boiler inspector to come to my factory and certify the furnaces. You understand what I'm trying to talk about. But then, as soon as I became Commerce Minister, we started working on what can be done to sort that out. And we've tried to make everything online, brought in 300 odd independent experts who can now certify. 11 or 12 agencies have been given the authority. What we are trying is the government loses its preeminent space and involve the private sector, bring in competition, inter se, and sort it out. But unless you complain and tell us if the system is working well or no, my officers will convince me with a beautiful presentation. And Uday is here, I don't know whether it was your movie. All is well, that's the message we get from our officers every time we take a presentation. But all is certainly not well when I look at your faces. So I really believe that we need to talk to each other more. You have a government which is willing to listen. The Honorable Finance Minister has been engaged in pre-budget consultations. I've been reading about all the feedback that you have been giving there. In fact, I would urge you to give much more feedback, which is more detailed, industry-wise, specific sector-wise. I don't mind even if you give 1,000 issues that need to be resolved. We are happy to look at that. Why should there be 2,000 compliances? Maybe FICCI can help us devise a common form like we do for our children, the common application form when we are applying to foreign universities. Can we have a common application form with drop-downs for each particular department for the additional information that they require? Can one form look at all the approvals at one shot? We'll ensure that it goes to the industry department, to the state, to the ward office for a shop and establishment license. You all will have to come up with some more innovative solutions. I'm willing to sit with any group, any number of times, to discuss, design, understand the practicality. Of course, all of you have dealt with government often enough to know that one will also have to ensure the sanctity of the system, that it doesn't get misused. Sadly, we have such a history that every time you give an idea for simplification to the officers, they'll quote 2 examples how that was misused in the past. And then you worry that, oh my God, if I do it, I don't want a problem after 5 years. But the fact of life is we can find solutions. It's not as if we can't find solutions to this. Very often we are seeing bankers are not lending enough money. Well, there's a problem there. We all know it. We also recognize it. I talk to a lot of bankers and they say, sir, you know, we have to take care of security and there are not enough projects coming forth and stuff like that. Big guys don't have so much of a problem. All my interactions with groups, they say money is not a problem. We just need facilitation on all the other things. But certainly the MSME sector, certainly the real estate sector, there is a problem. We've got to address that. Honorable Finance Minister has been looking at backstopping support to the NBFC sector, supporting the real estate industry, get back on its toes and get back to operations with a dedicated fund for the real estate sector. But very often, I think we in industry can also look at innovative ways. And whenever there's a downturn, I know we used to find solutions to improve our productivity. We used to do some cost rationalization measures. Every downturn is a great opportunity to make your businesses trimmer, better, more profitable in the long run, to prepare yourself for the better times coming on the way. Why can't all of us, particularly the large business houses, look at paying all our suppliers in advance or against delivery and push more capital, push more money into the hands of our suppliers? Now an ITC or Airtel or Mr. Modi's company or Singhania's company or Sandeep, your company, y'all will not have a problem if you go to borrow. But all your suppliers will. And that will affect your value chains. That will delay your supplies. And ultimately it will load a cost to your own purchases. But if you were to say, I'll pay you against delivery, your suppliers can up their production base. Your suppliers can be more efficient. Their costs will come down. Now, it may seem as if I'm passing on the problem. But as I said, we'll have to work together. Those of us who can support the system to gain traction, and very soon, if that supplier does well for 6 or 8 months, banker will be behind him to lend money to him, rather than the other way around. And my own sense is that we can find an innovative solution to each one of the problems that we are facing. The auto sector seems to be stressed about a few things, and they've been talking to us also. I said, why don't you go to the Honorable Supreme Court, on whose direction the problem of BS4 and 6 first happened, and request that, look, you can't have registration cutoff date as 31st March. It will have to be a production cutoff date. Otherwise, how will anybody plan their production? How do you know how many cars are going to be registered by 31st March? But when I say that to the industry, half of them who've already turned to BS4 or 6 are not interested in going to the court. They say, no, we are sorted out. I don't have any BS4 cars anymore. Others' problem, not my problem. But I think that's a sad reflection on our own businesses. Well, we can compete with each other. But then as an industry, we also need to work with each other for a more organized future. Otherwise, your customers are going to keep waiting. Let's wait for February, March. These guys will come on their knees and they'll sell us cars at a discount because they won't have any use for those BS4 cars after 31st March. And then there was a company which says, we don't have any BS4 cars. I said, then advertise, put full page advertisements that I have no BS4 car, so don't expect any discounts from me in February or March. Customers will probably give up hope on that and start buying your cars. If you are not getting, your customers are not getting enough finance The auto company can backstop loans given to the automobile sector. Auto sector delinquency is barely 0.6%. The court or the IRDA has ruled 3 years insurance has to be taken in advance. Unfortunately, the insurance companies are hawking 3-year insurance, maybe at 50,000 or 70,000 rupees. It's a cost to the consumer upfront. But the order is only third-party insurance, not the whole insurance. A third-party insurance in a car costs 3,800 rupees. But I think the common consumer is not educated enough, is not advised about this. And he ends up being sold a 70,000 rupee policy. He calculates for a 5 lakh rupee car, I need to give 1 lakh rupees to the bank, 50,000 to the insurance company, maybe 50,000 as upfront registration charge, 2.5 lakhs, it's too much. I won't do it now. But the solution is there amongst us. If we sit down, we can educate everybody, look, you only need a third-party insurance. I'm giving these specific examples only to suggest it may not be a great, very philosophical speech or a very exciting big discourse on what's good for India and how the world is changing and how India has a bright future. I can say all of that. But the fact is, it's first our mind. We got to sort ourselves in our mind. Are we willing to work for a $5 trillion economy? Are we willing to find innovative solutions? Innovation is not only in research. Innovation is in every aspect of our business. It's another matter that research is also an area that we have to really focus on. A Brookings report mentioned that India has only 216 researchers per million people compared to some 1,200 in China maybe, or 4,000 plus in the United States. What defines the United States today? It's only innovation, it's only research, it's only developments. We'll have to look at that more seriously. But each one of us will have to be engaged, will have to care for the rest of industry, will have to go beyond the fact that I may not have a problem, but I should be a concerned participant in the India growth story. And unless all of us get together, we will not be able to change this narrative. And once we change that narrative, to my mind, I think India will be unstoppable. It's the best place to invest in. It's the best place where you get both competitive edge or comparative advantages, but you also get a huge domestic market of 1 billion people aspiring for a better quality of life. And to my mind, then those issues which Sandeep flagged off with me, whether about compliances, let's work together what we can do on that. Regulatory requirements, certainly a matter of concern. We need to bring down the regulatory concerns, but we'll also have to be contemporary in our thinking. We can't wish away the environment, for example. We can crib as much as we want about regulatory overreach on the environment side. But can all of us, many of us living in Delhi, wish away environmental concerns? We cannot. Can we find solutions? Together, we can. Similarly, on contracts enforcement, certainly a matter of concern. We all know what is the source where it started. I think the Honorable Power Minister has been working with them. We have all been flagging it repeatedly. But believe me, if all of industry starts talking to the government there, it will 100% result in a solution. There is no stopping that. I am told there will be other investments in that state, other people operating in that state. I think if all the 3 or 4 big chambers, all the industry groups get together, some of you may have friendships also over there. One can talk about removing the malafide and the contract. The contract has to be is sacred. The sanctity of the contract cannot be compromised. The malafide should be acted upon. And very often when we hear about fear, I think the only people who have to fear are those who've probably been delinquent in their business practices in the past. For that also we are looking at finding solutions, what can be done so that the past can be dealing from the present and the future. Let's all of us work together if we can find some solutions towards that also. I'm sure there'll be some solutions to dealing, just like the recent IBC judgment, that the buyers will not have any problem about whatever happened in the past. Lot more can be done towards that. But unfortunately, we have a past which is not very glorious in terms of the way businesses were done. But the other aspect is also true. Many of us did not have an option. So government's job will be to balance both of these. And we are willing to do that. Let's work together to find a solution to that. But if there is a harassment on any score, we can only take action if you talk about it, complain about it. I know a few cases where when I came to know there was a harassment of sorts, I appealed, I pleaded again with the person, please make a complaint, we'll act on it. He said, no, I don't want to make a complaint. Now the person is completely kosher, no problem. I have the confidence that they'll find nothing from him. But if you don't complain, and it's government, we have no way to act. At the lowest level, we can't be monitoring every officer. It's very difficult to act against somebody without a proper inquiry and a complaint. There are processes which will stop us or which will give relief. When we are looking at the advantages of a rule-based system, a vibrant democracy, very, very good rule of law, and strong judiciary, there are certain things which have to go through that process. So we will need you all to raise your voice and talk about it. Then we can help solve that problem also. The government being the biggest litigant, a lot of steps are now being proposed. I hope you'll be pleased with the effort that the Honorable Finance Minister is doing. We'll soon hear some more about more and more things getting into the compounding framework rather than litigation. Our effort is to cut down litigation. Can FICCI come out with 500 items which we can change the law, which is unnecessary litigation, easily compoundable? There may be international examples where we can compound it. If you recall, we had the Uday Kotak committee. Uday Kotak and his team sit down on the companies law. Some 17, 18, 16 law sections were amended to remove the criminality of those. It reduced the litigation on company law by about 30-35%. Some more is on the anvil. Now, all of this is towards removing government as a litigant. But end of the day, we are saddled with a huge number of cases. We have to sort them out quickly. We would like you all to collectively guide us and tell us which are those cases which can have a huge impact on the economy, and whether we can find a systemic solution which at one stroke of pen can remove maybe 5,000 cases, maybe 50,000 cases. And there will be areas like that where litigation would be very much linked. Let's work together to find a solution for that. All of these are possible, ladies and gentlemen, if we are willing to listen and talk to each other. I commit myself on this very august occasion when FICCI is celebrating its annual general meeting and the change of baton. I commit myself to being a part of this journey to $5 trillion with you. And assure you that every one of the issues that are flagged off will be taken to its logical end. Where I'm not able to solve it, I'll share with you what the issues are, what the concerns are. But we'll certainly give it every possible shot that's possible to make that happen. You also talked about the FTAs. I'm glad that you have all liked the decision to stay out of RCEP. RCEP was nothing but an India-China FTA, as I understood it. And the Honorable Prime Minister was truly very, very courageous in taking this bold decision. It's a very difficult decision when in the international diplomatic world, you're sitting with some of the most powerful leaders, 15 or more of them, and you have to say that my conscience does not allow me to sign an agreement which is not in the interests of the people of India, which is not in the interests of Indian industry. It truly was a courageous decision. But Prime Minister from day one has set this ground rule that every decision his government will take will ensure that the impact of that decision will be good for the people of India, particularly the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and will ensure that Indian trade, Indian industry, Indian business does not get damaged or harmed by any action of the government. It's very unfortunate that all of these FTAs which were signed in the 9, 10, 11 period are today causing distress to many industry segments. But then I think there are two ways about it. These are international agreements, so I have already started the process of getting all the countries to sit down with us and review these FTAs, but that's certainly a more time-consuming affair. Can we all see how we can use these FTAs and improve the utilization of these FTAs for our exports? And if we find roadblocks, then flag it off with us. That strengthens our hand to find a solution to it. Can we all see which are the sectors where dumping is happening and approach the DGTR so that we can put some adequate safeguard, maybe duties, countervailing duties, safeguard duty, anti-dumping, whatever. And I've recently made some changes by which we have fast-tracked DGTR actions. Any of you who's engaged with them may kindly share it with the rest of your colleagues here. We fast-tracked the patent registrations, copyright, patents, all of that, and made all of it digital and transparent. We are working to support our startups in a big way. We need industry to support the startup ecosystem also. That can be a big boost to encourage entrepreneurship in the country. Lot of potential. Potential needs to be cashed. Potential needs to be exploited. Let's all of us work together. Let's all of us find solutions. And I have no doubt in my mind, when each one of us takes it upon himself that my duty, and as the Prime Minister said, with every right comes a duty, with greater responsibility comes with greater power comes greater responsibility. If we all accept our power, our positions as a greater responsibility to a better and brighter future to 1.3 billion Indians, give them a better ray of hope for what is in store for them in the years to come, I think there's no doubt in my mind that India has a glorious future. The $5 trillion economy is doable, is possible, and shall be done. That's our commitment to each one of you. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister for Commerce, Industry and Railways, Shri Piyush ji, Sandeep Somani, past presidents of FICCI, Your Excellencies, senior officials from the government, members of FICCI, friends of FICCI, media, ladies and gentlemen, Namaste. A very brief but significant word in terms of a vote of thanks to our Honorable Minister. From the need to enhance consumption, to the pain of agriculture, to the deep significance of exports, which is today only 1.7% of the economy, to the fact that we have options in fiscal deficit, which has been controlled, our inflation has been controlled, but a worrisome growth. But yet one message stood strongly, and that is together we can achieve a $5 trillion economy. Sir, as we say thank you to you for your presence, for your promise of partnership, for your continued accessibility, for the depth of your understanding of every subject, and the way in which you go to the bottom and find innovative solutions. All of us collectively say two things, not just one. First, thank you, and second, that we are with you. FICCI has always been part of the development journey of India and will continue to work closely with the government to build a new India towards our $5 trillion dream, which will become a reality. And significantly, the 75th year of our independence and the 95th year of FICCI coincides. Let us, at that point of time, be very, very clear that India will be not just a bright spark in the economy of the world, but the brightest spark. And FICCI will be the principal representative of the Indian industry, nationally and globally, enhancing the economic growth of India and the status of India in thought leadership and in every possible way. I thank you all for this wonderful audience, to our Honorable Minister, to our President, past Presidents, and look forward to an exciting 2 days that together we will craft the future of the country in collaboration with the most accessible and responsible, most evolved and innovative government. Thank you all very much, and namaste.